Hey everyone, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher you can find at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, and a variety of other places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. I'm really excited to be back with you again this week to share some lesson ideas, some things that you might be able to take and adapt for your classroom. This week I'm going to be talking about second grade specifically and how I'm taking some of my everyday sort of run-of-the-mill lessons and sort of souping them up, changing them, adapting them so that I can share them with parents, not through a concert, but through like a pre-recorded video that I'm going to send out, sort of an informants explanatory video that I'm going to share with parents. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But before I do that, let me just share that if you hear me say anything in the video today or show a resource or show an object or something that you're like, that's cool, where can I find that? I have a whole page on my blog dedicated to the links in these videos. You can find that either by clicking the caption at the bottom of this video, if you're on Facebook or YouTube or listening on the podcast later in the week, or if you're on Instagram, you can find that on my LinkedIn profile. Or you can just go to my blog, makemomentsmatter.org, click the videos tab that has Musical Mondays and the current year, and you can find the links there. Okay, 3 quick things. 1, I know that Easter is upon us, and I'm talking a little bit about a few Easter resources this week. So if you're interested, I have a bundle with all of my Easter everything, bulletin boards, folk songs, interactive game centers. If I have something like that for this theme, it's in that bundle and you can get it if you want, like all together. If you're like, I don't know, I just want everything. I made one of those for Easter stuff. So if you're interested, it's there. That's linked on the links page. Second, it's like so crazy windy in Kansas today. So if you hear it if you hear it sound like a tornado or crazy wind or something, or you hear like Munchkin singing outside, that means that probably I've been carried off by the tornado, but I'll probably be fine. I'll just keep going, and then I'll just deal with Wicked Witch after the video's over. No, but anyway, it's really windy, so if you hear any sounds, that's what's going on. Also, I live next to a park, and I just wanted to clarify, there's a girl at the park. She lives nearby, and she communicates mostly through screams. Just kidding, but she screams all the time, to the point that it sounds like I've gone out to check on her before work because I'm like, I think that this girl's actively on fire. The way she's screaming, she's not. So if you hear wind or terrible screaming, it's normal. It's fine. Anyway, okay, so that out of the way. Let's get going. So I know I shared in my previous video 2 weeks ago about second grade, and I know that it says I'm talking about second grade again today. I am. It's a different set of lessons, a different set of things. It'll show you also the progression of what I did last time to what I did this time. If you're listening to these in the podcast or watching the videos later, you can sort of see the progression next to one another. But I'm going to share about these things and then also talk about how I'm taking this content and how I'm sort of flipping it and changing it, adding to it, and making it something that I'm going to share with parents. Because this is a weird year. We're not having concerts. And the expectation from my principal is not that I have to do something concert-ish or concert-like or exactly like that. She's okay as long as I'm sharing something for each grade level out with parents. And so I talked with other people in my district, I talked with other friends and see what they're doing. I talked to my principal, and we decided that I'm just going to take some of the stuff that we're doing in the class already. I'm going to soup it up or change it. I'm going to videotape it. I'm going to try and highlight students as best I can and then sort of share that out with parents. And what that's developed into is really more of what a lot of people sort of call an informants, where you're explaining or showing parents what's actually happening in your classroom. And it's not just the exact game. I'm just going to tape it and share it with them. It's sort of changed. I've added to things a little bit, but you can sort of see that throughout the lessons. I'll talk about how I'm modifying or changing things as we go. So I hope this gives you some ideas that maybe you can use in your own room, or ideas that how you might adapt and change some of our sort of more regular content and make it applicable that you can share out with parents. Okay, that said, let's jump into it. So my second graders, we've been doing just like at the beginning of every class, this whole year long, we've been doing just a little bit of body percussion. I use my little tabby cat puppet, to do a little copycat poem. We go back and forth, and we do a little bit of clapping, a little bit of patting, a little bit of stomping, a little bit of snapping. Each time we go back and forth where I do it and they echo, it's maybe 4 examples, right? Not a ton. And so we do just a little bit back and forth. That's something we've done all year long. We also, in the last couple weeks, have added solfege. So and I've waited until just now because we've really not been singing all year. We're at the point where the space is a little bit better. I have a really nice air purifier. Kids are wearing masks more consistently and a little bit more effectively. They're actually wearing them and not like sucking them into their mouth or anything. So that's gotten better. More people in my building have gotten vaccinated, and so we're singing just a little tiny bit. Not a lot, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and it's just solfege, and it's not super full voice. I mean, so it's really, the problem sort of mitigated, but just a little bit. So we're adding in solfege a little bit at the beginning of our class. So at the beginning of class, there's just a little bit of back and forth with that, a little bit of back and forth with body percussion. And then one of the things that I'm adding this week is body percussion on a staff. That's something I've shared with y'all before about 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, something I'm already doing. But it's something I'm doing this week just for 2nd graders. It's the first time they're seeing it, because 2nd grade is really the year in our curriculum where like notation really starts to happen, where they start to like see written notation and have to be able to read that and understand note value and understand that on staff, start making the connections between melodic movement and vocal movement. And so this is sort of another outgrowth of that. Like, we're moving on, we're adding in notation, we're adding in that visual component and trying to interpret and understand how that creates sound. So anyways, I'm going to get into that in just a minute, but that comes up in this series of lessons. So at the beginning of our class, we do a little bit of back and forth with body percussion, a little bit of solfege, a little bit of just echo repeating sort of stuff. And then I say, I have a very exciting poem for you. And it's about my friend. His name is, Mr. Dumpty. And he was sort of not very smart. He was sort of sitting on this like wall, sort of like a fence, but it was big. It was a stone wall. He was sitting on a wall, and he had sort of a really bad, he wasn't really balanced the way he should be, and he fell off the wall. And the kids are like, Humpty Dumpty, we know it. I was like, okay, yeah, I know you know it. Also, I don't understand why, but like, why is it that Humpty Dumpty is an egg? I've seen him as an egg all the time. And maybe it's because like an egg falls off a wall and cracks, and that's not as like frightening a visual as like if we had like a human falling off a wall. Then the poem, it's like maybe for the sake of like kids seeing it and not being traumatized by it, it's an egg. I don't know. Anyway, I've always known Humpty Dumpty as an egg, even though it's never anywhere in any of the story that I can see. But I found this fun little egg beanie plush thing. And I actually did a concert several years ago about this book called What Do You Do With an Idea? And this little egg is a plushy version of the egg that's in the book. So if you've ever read that book and you're like, that egg looks oddly familiar, it's because it's from this book. It's the version of that. And on the back it says, on his little bum, it says, what do ideas become? Sort of cute. Anyway, so I bought this years ago because I did a concert based around this book and I wanted a little plushy version of it. I found it on Amazon. It's like $11. I put a link on the links page if you're interested. But I always use it for Humpty Dumpty as well because it's like a fun visual, and also like all the visuals of Humpty Dumpty I find are like a little egg wearing a crown. So like, hey, perfect. So anyway, I have a little sort of a ramp going up to the stage. Like my room is right next to the stage. So I have a ramp going up from my room to the stage, and there's a little wall. And so Humpty Dumpty sits on the little wall, a little pony wall sort of thing. And so when we read the story, or when we say the poem, not read the story, when we say the poem, Humpty Dumpty, I walk over and Humpty Dumpty's sitting there and I go, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. And so I get my little Humpty Dumpty, and he sort of serves as the Humpty Dumpty stand-in, right? Before we do anything else with this poem, we talk about it. And I say, okay, so Humpty Dumpty looks like an egg, but does it say that he's an egg in the poem? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty was an egg. No, it doesn't say that. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Okay, so it doesn't say he's an egg, but sometimes when we pretend we'll just say he's an egg, just for fun. Okay, so Humpty Dumpty sat on, but I always talk about like sort of the context and the words and the stuff that goes into a poem or a song. I want kids to have historical context. I want them to understand words in context. I feel like if you don't give those contextual elements, you're sort of missing the point of some of these songs. You're not giving kids the full picture. Like when we sing Little Liza Jane, I talk about a streetcar. What is a streetcar? What does it do? I want kids to know that connection. It helps build their schema. It helps connect them to the song or connect them to the poem, whatever it is you're doing. So for Humpty Dumpty, we talk about some of the things. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Was it great? Was he like, oh, that fall felt just wonderful. I'm so glad that I fell off that wall. It was so great. And we talk about how great can mean like big or tremendous or, a very... what's another word? And we talk about what that could mean and how great works in this sentence. It wasn't great. He didn't enjoy the fall. It was great. Like it was great big, or it was very, it had a big effect on him, right? So he had this fall, this large fall. And then we say all the king's horses and all the king's men. I'm like, okay, so if the men and women and all the people come running to help try and put Humpty Dumpty back together, that makes sense. Why are the horses there? And we could talk about how maybe, this is a very old poem, and maybe when the poem was first spoken or taught, when people shared it with each other, maybe it was the time before cars. And so people were riding horses. So maybe they got on their horse and ran to try and help. Maybe there's, doctors or something came running to try and help. Or maybe in this case, it was like a farmer who knew about eggs, came to try and take care of Humpty Dumpty. Anyway, so we talk about the contextual factors in the poem just so kids can sort of get a little bit more of that. We say it again. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. I teach them a little sort of a silly poem to go with it. Oh, sorry. By the way, Humpty was sitting. I forgot. My friend Jenny found this cool mug for me. This is totally not at all about Humpty Dumpty. She found this cool mug for me. It says, "Every Moment Matters," which is the name of the Facebook group that I started. So anyway, how fun is that? And also, it's like a huge mug. You could put like if you did one of those cakes in a mug in this, you'd have like a cake for 4. It's amazing. Anyway, thank you, Jenny. This is so cool. Also, join our Facebook group, Every Moment Matters, Music Education Community. Anyway, sorry. So I was setting Humpty down, setting him in the mug. So we learn a simple little set of actions to go along with it. And I do Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. I try to make an egg shape with our hands. It's not always very good. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And when the egg gets down to our hand or our knees, we do like a and break apart. So Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And then we go, all the king's horses and all the king's men. It's sort of hard to see because I'm close to the camera, but it's sort of like all the king's horses and all the king's men. And instead of bringing our hands together, we go, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So like when your hands come out and around, it looks like they're coming together to like do one of these, like hands clasped together, hands next to each other, but they're going to miss because they can't do it. So all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So we do it several times. We learn it. We add the actions. It's fun. A lot of kids know this, and I always was surprised, like what nursery rhymes they know and what they don't. And it depends. Sometimes homeroom teachers will teach them to them. I have a couple of kindergarten teachers who do. Sometimes they'll get on like super simple songs, the YouTube channel, and they'll just watch a series of videos or something on YouTube, kid YouTube, that has like animated nursery rhymes. So sometimes kids know these and sometimes they don't. But most of my kids know at least this first part of Humpty Dumpty. So we add in the actions. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. And I say, but you know what? I think I can. I can put Humpty together again. It's no problem. Because, some people have a real problem. Like if you ever dropped an egg if you've ever dropped an egg, can you put that egg back together? It's not really possible, is it? Usually, because the eggs, like the shell is so thin, you have to be really. It's hard. It's hard to put that. It's like if you dropped like a plate or a dish or a mug or something, and you break it. That's easier to put back together because you can get glue, and you can get whatever you need. But an egg is really hard to do. So I think I'm gonna be able to do it. So how about you all say the poem, and I've got something on my desk that's gonna help me. You all say the poem. I'll go get it, and then we'll put Humpty back together. Okay? Great. Because all the king's horses and all the king's men, they couldn't do it, but I think I can. All right. So as they're saying the poem, I walk over to my desk. So Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. But I can, because I have tape. And I don't think that they used tape. They probably, back then, they didn't have tape like this. So I think that if we just took a little bit of tape and just put it in just the right spot, look, you can't even see that tape. It's perfect because it's the it's glossy, but it's the see-through kind of tape, so you can't even see it. So no problems. See, perfect. Humpty Dumpty fixed, and the kids are like, no, that wouldn't do it. Oh, okay. But I have another idea. So how about you all say the poem again, and I'll go get my other idea. Okay. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. But I can, because I have painter's tape. And this is a special kind of tape that painters like to use because it helps them figure out where they paint and what they're going to paint. Like a house painter, not like Van Gogh, that's a good painter. Anyway, it's not as sticky. It works a little bit better. I think it might work better for an egg. So anyway, and kids flip out when I start putting this on the egg, but it's actually fine. Like, you can't do that. So anyway, but I put a good deal of painter's tape on the egg, and they're like, that's not gonna work either. Oh, okay. But that's fine because I have another idea. So every time they say the poem, I go get something else. And so then after tape, I go, okay, well, I need something that's going to hold things together, right? That's what we're trying to do. Is different pieces of the egg. We're trying to pull it together and hold it together. So I know what I could use. And so they say the poem, and then I go over and I pull out my box of rubber bands. Perfect, because rubber bands can hold things together, so I bet it's going to work just fine for this egg. And as I'm putting this on, they're like, "Yeah, that won't work." I'm like, "Are you sure it won't work?" I said, "Look, it seems to be working pretty good. I could put them on." Anyway, doesn't work. So then I go back and he keep adding stuff to him. You got to be careful with the rubber bands because he gets little legs stuck in there. All right. Okay, I have another idea. Humpty Dumpty. So then I pull out glue stick. Would that work? I think that would probably work. I don't know if it would really work right on him and then I try and always find an old glue stick that is dried out, so that I'm not actually forced to try and my poor egg actually glue him. But they're like, that won't work. Okay, well, so anyway, so then I sort of stick that underneath one of the rubber bands, lay that on him. Okay. Okay, I have another idea. Humpty Dumpty. So they say a thing, and then I go, okay, something that holds things together, right? Perfect. I got the perfect answer. Okay, yes, I do have a gold stapler. I know, because I'm so fancy. But anyway, so I hold up my stapler. They're like, nah, that won't work either. And because they really don't like that, because then I'm like, but I don't go and staple Humpty Dumpty. And then I hold up a glue bottle, and they're like, no, that's not going to work. And I'm like, oh, what else is going to... Oh, I know exactly what'll work. So then the last time through, I pull out a Band-Aid. And they're like, maybe. So then I undo the Band-Aid and I stick it on him, and we decide that that'll probably work. So the reason I've done this is because there are a couple things. One, they know the poem by now. If they didn't know it before, they for sure know it because we've said it about 6 or 7 times. And even the kids who didn't really know it beforehand, they know it now. Okay, so he ends up with a little Band-Aid on him. Okay, the other thing is I want them to start thinking about what are some sticky things that might help hold this egg together. Honestly, nothing. This is going to work. Really work for pour their egg, but I want them to think about different things that they could use. And actually, then I pull up a slide that says, it has like a little sentence stem, and the sentence stem says, what if we use, and there's a blank. And a sentence stem is just when you write out the first part of a sentence. It's a trick that, not a trick, it's a scaffold that English language, or teachers of English language learners use a lot to give them that like first part of the sentence where they only have to fill in one thing. And that's what I like to use also in the music room, because then kids are less focused on the structure of the sentence and the structure of the response, and they're more focused on the element that they're going to add. It sort of lowers some of the stress level some of those kids have, thinking that like, oh, I'm going to have to speak out loud, or I'm going to say whatever. It sort of lowers that stress level, that affective filter, and it only means that they have to add in their one thing. And so the one thing they're going to add is, what if we use, and they have to think of something that's sticky, or that might help mold things together, or congeal, or whatever, bring the egg back together, right? So we've gone through a couple examples. We've used tape, we talked about tape, we talked about glue, we talked about rubber bands. What else could really work? Well, I guess he needs an egg. What about syrup? Would syrup work? Syrup's sticky. Maybe. What are some other things? And so then we added a little B section to our little poem. So the poem is, the A section is just the poem. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And then the B section is, what if we used rubber cement? And nah, I don't think it's gonna work. Okay, what if we used peanut butter? No, that won't work. Okay. What if we used bubble gum? That won't work. What if we used Gorilla Glue? That won't work. And so what we come up with this little B section is, what if we used the thing, the sticky item, and then a response of, that won't work. Because we've decided really nothing is probably going to work for the egg, but we can come up with some ideas anyway. So each kid then gets to, I give them a few minutes on their own to think about something that's sticky, think about something that could work. It can be silly, that's fine. The poem itself is silly, so it's fine if your answer is silly. And each of my kids has an iPad, and so on that iPad I have them write out the thing that they're going to say. And I always say, like, if you say the same thing as someone else, that's totally fine. Totally fine with me. And totally fine, because maybe we didn't work the first time, maybe it'll work the second time. Maybe we try it again, it'll work. So if somebody else has rubber bands and you want to say rubber bands, that's fine. Okay, so it gives them options of what they can say, what they can add in. So our poem, the large form becomes, the A section is the poem, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. The part B is the question and answer. Well, it's really a call and response, honestly, because it goes like, what if we use syrup? That won't work. What if we use rubber cement? That won't work. So a couple things that I'm hoping kids are getting. One, the B section, oh wow, wouldn't it be so great if it were like a triple feel like the poem? It's not always. Sometimes it goes, what if we use, it goes back into sort of the duple, which is fine. I'm fine with that. Not really what I'm focusing on. The second thing that I really like for kids to have is some sort of answer. And we're working on that sort of call and response, so that like there's, what if we used whatever, and the response is always, that won't work. Yeah, kids come up with some silly things. I had one kid who's like, what if we used earwax? I was like, gross, but okay, fine answer. Whatever. One kid's like, what if we used epoxy? I was like, your dad's a contractor, or whatever. But they come up with lots of fun, silly things, which is great. What I'm doing to soup this up for parents, I'm recording the bit that's just us doing the poem with the actions or whatever as an A section, and then each kid is recording themselves saying their thing. What if we use rubber cement? Or whatever. What if we use bubble gum? What if we use crazy glue? What if we use, hodgepodge or whatever? And they get to say their thing, and they're going to record that, and I'm going to try and have a bunch of kid answers followed by the group going, that won't work. You could do that a couple ways. You could just have the kid come up to the front of the class, say their thing, record that, and then have the class, whatever. You could have little snippets if you want to edit together videos. That's the route I went. I don't know if that's a good route or not, because it's a lot of editing. You have little snippets of each kid. You can hear them a little bit better that way, and then have a class response of that won't work. So what I found is with my students is that then I had to give them some time. I had to not fill my lesson up so much because I needed to give them time to think about what they could say, their sticky thing. I needed to give them a chance to like find a quiet place in the room. We had to talk about how to either, you know, like I either take the video or they take the video, and we have to talk about you got to be in the frame, or you know, if we're gonna submit that and show that to parents to be able to take that video. So I have to give a lot of like extra time for like tech problems or things not recording or kids not having answers or kids having questions, or you know, how are we recording all that. That takes a lot of time and it's very frustrating. So the first time I did the set of lessons, I didn't give myself time and I was frustrated because I was trying to get through stuff and tech issues kept coming up. So the second time I did the set of lessons with a different class, I would just sort of pulled things out of the lesson and set them aside as like, if we get to them, great, but if we don't, that's fine. And then spent more time recording or, you know, individual time with kids, whatever they needed to make sure that happened. When kids aren't recording, if they're done recording, because really it's a small snippet, but you know, doing this sort of stuff with kids, like time balloons, like, you know, I'm stuck for 4 minutes with this poor girl whose computer's not working or her iPad's not working, right? I had a girl who her iPad is like possessed. Every time she tries to do something, like she opens an app and her iPad kicks her off the app and then deletes it, like deletes the whole app. So this poor girl, she was like trying to like go to do games or whatever. Like she had extra time. Anyway, she kept deleting things. And then it was like, well, go, you know, we have this like little app that like kids can add. Instead of going to the app store, it's like our own district app store. It deleted that. It deleted the camera off her phone. I don't know how that's possible, but it did. It's like, anyway, so with things like that, you got to build in a little extra time. So with my kids, what I did was, when they aren't recording, if they finish early, I have an interactive game for them to do, which they just take a QR code, they scan a QR code, zoom with the camera on their iPad, and they can go and play the game. What's really handy is the Easter version of this game that I made is called Collect the Easter Eggs. Well, guess what? If Humpty Dumpty is an egg, these are thematically connected because he's an egg. We're talking about an egg. And then, oh my gosh, collect the eggs. So the kids, like, even if they're not like, oh, Easter, whatever, like when they get a correct answer, a little egg zooms through the screen and they sort of love that. So again, where's your backup? My backup first is this game, which they can use with a QR code, or if they need to, they can use the little URL, right, to get to the game. My kids have done a couple of these interactive games, so it works pretty well. This is the musical instruments version, right? If that one kid like zips through and doesn't want to play the game again, guess what? I have the same sort of game, only symbols and vocabulary. Oh, so I've got multiple options for kids for when they finish early or, you know, whatever. My kids have iPads. These work on iPads. My kids, if you have Chromebooks, those work. The games work on there too. Or if you're remote, they work remotely. If you through Google Classroom or whatever. So it's something that you can sort of use as you need. Shannon, you just said I need more info about how your district set up their own app store. It's called, I don't know, it's called Manager. That's what we call it. It's an app manager. It's its own thing. The tech department did it. No idea how it happened. But it's not like it's like a version of the App Store. It's like their own App Store. And the App Store is actually like deleted from iPads, where kids can only get apps through, well, I can only get apps through the manager too. But that's how we get apps. I don't know anything about how that works. I just know it works. So sorry, Shannon, can't help you with that one. Okay, so day 2. That was all day 1. That's a lot to do, I guess, in day 1. I'm trying to record and upload and get all of that so we can send to our parents. Okay, day 2. When kids come in, we do a little solfege, and then let me see if I can pull up here. We start doing a little bit of body percussion, and what we do with the body percussion, let me see if it's going to pull up. It's not going to pull up. There we go. So what we do with the body percussion when we're first learning it, and I've shared about this sort of back in the fall with my 3rd and 4th and 5th graders, but now that I'm doing it with 2nd grade, we're sort of starting to make connections between the rhythms that we're reading and body percussion on a staff, because they've done so much body percussion, they've done so much reading, and now we're just sort of gluing those two ideas together and bringing them together. So the way that we start, here, I'll see if I can pull up this PowerPoint. Okay, hello. Yeah, there we go. So the way that we start, and I'm sorry this is flipped for you, Instagram, and I'm sorry there's a ring light. It just doesn't, technology doesn't like to work for me on these nights. So anyway, it starts with just one line, just clapping, and just ta, 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 ta. So we just read the rhythm first, and then, man, I just cannot get this to work right. Sorry. For the angle here, sorry. You read the rhythm first, and then what line is it? Oh, it's clapping. Okay, well, perfect. We just clap it. Amazing. Clap, 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 clap. Easy. The next one is just a slightly more difficult rhythm. Same thing. And then a slightly more difficult rhythm. Same thing. It eventually moves on to patting, right? So read the rhythm, and then instead of clap, you pat. Perfect. So kids get used to that idea of the patting in the line and the clapping line. Easy. When it's time then to integrate, then they get the idea of like, okay, well, if it's on the patting line, you pat it. If it's on the clapping line, you clap it. And this first time with second graders, I always have to talk about how if you're reading a book, you read the whole top line, and then you read the whole next line, and then the whole next line. But if you look on the side, these two lines are actually connected. That means you have to read them together. You have to read along sort of both lines at the same time. Luckily, it's not like there's something happening here and something happening here on both lines at the same time. It's either one line or the other line. And so as you go along, as you track along, and that's another reading word, you're tracking, you're following. As you track along from left to right, it goes pat, 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 clap, ta-dee, ta-dee, ta. Ta. We go through, it's simple, it's easy. We move on to the next one, a slightly more complicated rhythm. And this whole first day, all we're doing is just patting and clapping, just those two lines. It's really easy. Later on in the week, we'll add in a third line when the kids are ready for it. We'll add in a stomp line. But basically, I like being able to start with just one line where the other line doesn't exist so that they can only sort of see the one thing. They get really, it's a scaffold, honestly. They get comfortable with the process of doing it with one level, either patting or clapping or stomping, whatever it is. They do just the one level, and then they can sort of integrate really easily as you add in just one thing at a time. Instead of like, here are 5 lines, here, it's a little bit more simplified. It's a little easier for them to get. By the time they're ready for, later on, maybe by the time we're done with second grade, we'll get to a 4-line staff like this where there's snapping, clapping, patting, and stomping. But even if we did that, the first few examples would be all on one line or, all on another line where they're not jumping between those 4 lines. It's always simple first and then move to complex. So that's body percussion. This whole thing, by the way, is in a bundle, body percussion bundle on my TPT store. It's linked in the notes. But one of the things you can do is, because I give you the slides and a PowerPoint if you want it, or if you want to use Google Slides, I give you all the slides sort of pre-done. But you can rearrange or use as you want. If you're like, that's cool, but I want a more advanced version. Okay, well then delete all the simple slides or add them in however you want, rearrange, whatever, so that I just try and give you a ton of examples of different options. And at this point, my 4th graders and 5th graders are doing stuff like this, where it's multiple lines with Takadimi as well. I also give you just blank lines if you want to sort of create your own in the moment or whatever, if that's what you're interested in. So that happens in the first 4 or 5 minutes, is that we come in, we do the solfege, we do a little bit of body percussion, just echo, and then we start moving it onto the staff. We probably spend 5 to 10 minutes talking through the staff, doing examples slowly, and then not getting too advanced because that's not really the point of the lesson. I'm just sort of spreading out this body percussion thing across 4 or 5 lessons, so we're sort of moving slowly through that. Then we get into a lesson that I usually use in kindergarten or 1st grade, but I'm using for 2nd grade, again, to share with parents so they can sort of see what we're doing. And this is a lesson that is based on Edward Elgar's Fairies and Giants. It's from a suite called Wand of Youth. And let's see if I can find it. I made a visual here. And we'll see if I can find it. But it's something usually I do with my younger kiddos, but don't know where I put it. Anyway, so it's a really simple sort of short piece, and it's this very sort of clear A-B form. Let me see if I can find it. Nope, cool. It's a really sort of simple A-B form, and what we do is we map out the song. We talk about how first there's an introduction, and then there's an A section, which is going to be, you're going to hear the fairies, and we map it out with a visual. First you hear the fairies, and then they'll fly around, do their thing for a while, and then you'll hear giants. Very different sound. Very, very, very different. And the fairies are high and exciting, and they're way up in the sky, and the giants are low, and they're angry, and they're sort of stomping around, and then you'll hear fairies again. Ooh, and we map it out and does this very clear A, B, A, B. There's an introduction at the beginning, there's a coda at the end, and what kids get to do as they're going along is that they get to do some movements with the different parts. The first time we talk about it, I just sort of sing the parts in a sort of a silly, simple way. And it's just like silly little thing with my fingers, because I pretend there's a little fairy on the end of your finger, and it's flying way up high. Oh, now pretend there's a fairy on this finger, and there's a fairy on this finger. Obviously, this is not like Elgar's final, like, imagination of what this suite's going to sound like. This is me just giving examples, being silly. Okay, oh, now there are 5 fairies, one on each of the end of your fingers. And sometimes the fairies are, flitting around. Sometimes they're swooping and swooshing, right? Okay, and then what if there were fairies on this hand and on this hand? Oh my gosh. So we're doing it. And then, but then the giants. When the giants show up, the giants sound like this. Bum, 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 bum. And they are not going to be high up in the sky and happy and floating around. They're going to go bum, 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 bum. Actually to a very good steady beat, which is nice. Dun, 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 dun. And the kids, can you match them? Dun, 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 dun. You got to get your face into it too. It can't just be the hands, right? Okay, so we do that where it's very different. The fairies are up high and the giants are way down low. And so we talk about on the form, when you hear them, the fairies will be up high in the sky and the giants will be way down low, and you're going to see a very distinct difference. Now, I have the visual that goes along with it that I project up on the board. I put that visual in the downloads on the links page so that you can download that visual if you want it. Can't show it to you now because apparently can't find it. Awesome. But it's there if you want it for your own classroom. What we eventually added into that is, like, we could just do that and run through the song once with just our fingers doing the actions. And what I say at the beginning is we start like this the beginning, because it's the introduction. We're going to wait. When you first hear the fairies, your fingers can start doing the fairy thing. When you hear the giants, your hands can do the giant thing. And we talk about how it's going to be high, low, or fairy, giant, or A, B. And we make that connection with what's happening in the classroom. And then the coda, the ending, is there's like a little bit of fairy and a little bit of giant. If you hear fairy, you can do the fairy thing. If you hear giant, you can do the giant thing. But whatever you hear, you got to do. So you could run through that once with just using your hands as actions. What I like to add is that we add in, if you ever watch like a Disney movie, I say this to kids, you ever watch like a Disney movie or like a cartoon thing where a fairy flies through? You know how sometimes like fairy dust falls off them? You can sort of see, even though they're very, very small, you can see where they are because there's like a trail of that dust sort of stuff that falls off them. I think we need that. I think we need something to help us sort of see the fairies a little bit better. So I have these, it's not fairy dust, but it will help you see. So as you're going, you can go, okay, it doesn't look as exciting in this video, but in my classroom, it's magical, right? And you can imagine what the fairy would look like as it flies through the air. Now, okay, a fairy, this is sort of like a Tinkerbell color, like the magic that's flying out of Tinkerbell, right? This sort of yellowy color. But could a fairy be orange? Could it be an orange color? Yeah, sure. What if it were like a water fairy or something? Ooh, then it would be like this sort of blue color. That's sort of nice. I mean, I have all sorts of colors of scarves. We talk about how whatever color it is, ooh, that's perfect. So that we have a variety of colors, because we're going to record this for parents. So I want them to see lots of different colors. So what we do then is, this is perfect for a fairy. Or if you want to open it up, however the song goes, you match your movements to the song. What about when the giants show up? A giant's not going to go do 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 do. No, it's gonna go dun 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 dun. Maybe it goes dun 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 dun. Right? So that's what they get to do, and then we just do it once or twice and we record it. It's so easy for the second graders to pick up. Like I said, I usually do this with kindergarten or first grade. And it's a lesson that you usually get after the first or second time doing it. Then they do it perfectly, flawlessly. They love it. Second graders get it like bam right away. It does help. We are talking about A-B form, so like, okay, it reinforces curriculum. And it's super fun visual to see, and parents will like it. The song is easy. The song's actually, if you don't have it in your library already, it's on Spotify. I'm sure it's on YouTube. But it's a fun song, and it's called Fairies and Giants, F-A-E-R-I-E-S. And Giants, and it's from Edward Elgar's, it's like the suite called like Wand of Youth. I always forget, and then I remember after searching for it for 5 minutes, then I remember, oh, that's what it is, and that helps me. But there's also on the downloads page, there's a visual if you want to go with that sort of helps reinforce. So in this lesson we do our beginning stuff, our solfege, we do our reading on the staff, and then we do a little bit of Fairies and Giants. If we have extra time, usually this is when kids have to like catch up with those Humpty Dumpty recordings, things that they kept, and so I leave a little bit of time at the end to catch up on that or to submit those videos through our special program that we use at my district to submit stuff to teachers. We spend time, because sometimes uploading those videos, even though they're like 4 or 5 seconds of just video of that one kid, it takes a while to upload, so I add a little bit of time for that. The third day of these lessons, we do that same thing to start. We start with solfege, we just echoing back and forth. We do body percussion, a little bit more complex this time. So in that bundle that I created that's on Teachers Pay Teachers, you can add in and make more complex as you want. So from the previous day, I add in some slightly more complex slides so that we can move on to something more interesting. And then we do, we take a trip to the note neighborhood. And in the note neighborhood, we learn about bar lines. And you know, when you're first learning notes and patterns, usually it's shorter patterns. And what my kids have seen up to this point usually is like 4-beat patterns, four beats on a line, maybe another one on another line. But in this lesson, we talk about a bar line and how you can use a bar line to separate out. So you can have like 4 beats on one side, 4 beats on another side. And eventually you can do it for like, 3/4 time or 6/8 time. But in this first lesson, this introductory lesson, again, scaffolding, we're just doing 4/4 time, which I don't even mention to kids, but we just talk about there are 4 beats usually, and what can you put in there. And so we go through that Note Neighborhood PowerPoint, which is on Teachers Pay Teachers that I put on the links page. But we go through and it talks about how you can have some on one side and some on the other side, and that bar line is there to sort of divide up the things on each side, right? And then in that lesson, it also talks about, it introduces them to the double bar line at the end, and also introduces a repeat sign, which my kids in second grade, it's part of our curriculum, they're supposed to learn repeat signs. So this is like perfect timing. But then what we do is my kids on their iPads, they take an app that we use and they create a 4-beat pattern. They create a bar line, and then they create 4 beats on the other side. We don't do a double bar line or a repeat sign, but their task for this day is to create some beats on one side and some on the other, and to put that bar line in the middle. This tells me a lot of things. It tells me if they understand 4 beats and what that means. It tells me if they understand actual note value. Like, do they get that like a half note counts for 2 beats? Hopefully they do by now, but some of them don't. So I have to go and remind them, like, oh, she gets 2. So of your 4 beats total, we talk about that. And then we also, one of the big things that I learned about barline the first year I did it is, as you're teaching them to do barline, you have to remind them that, like, the barline doesn't go from the top of the page to the bottom of the page, but it also cannot be the same size as the notes. Let me see if I can illustrate that and explain that, because some of my kids have a hard time with that, and it's something that like we have to do. So let me see if I can show you really quick. So on the app we use, which is called Sketches School, like they can make really easily, oh great, and it updated over the break. So we just came back from spring break. So it's not gonna work the way that I wanted. Go away. Okay, I know, go away. Cool. So I don't know how to get the tools off the page. Anyway, so, it just goes away automatically, sort of. So I have to show kids that, like, when they're doing the bar line, I'm sort of zooming through here, the bar line does not do that. It's not super huge. It's not, you know, life-changingly large. Some kids will do the thing where they draw. Okay, cool. All the functionality from before has changed. Glad I know this while I'm talking to you and not when I'm like with the class. Okay, so a lot of kids do this where they draw from top to bottom, right? And that's not a very good bar line. So, because it's just so super huge. Then some kids also do this. Their bar line is so much the same size as the other notes, you cannot tell the difference of where it is and where it is not. So I always talk to kids about how when they're doing it, it needs to be a little bit bigger than the line so it's easy to spot and so you know right where it is. So that's one thing we talk about. And then in this lesson, my kids go through and they actually do this with their iPads, and they create 4 beats on one side, 4 on the other, and the bar line in the middle. Of course, then there's that girl who, remember, I was talking about her earlier, that her iPad is just jinxed. I don't know, something happened to it. But it deletes stuff all the time. It kicks her out of apps. It shuts itself off. It's weird. And so it deleted the app that we're supposed to use. And she was like, I really want to do this, but I don't know how. And I was like, okay. Well, because like the idea was that they were going to do this and then submit it to me. Okay, well, all right. So we went analog. I was like, we're going to do analog. She's like, I don't know what that means. It's fine. So a couple options. You can either take like a dry erase pocket, and you could put like a piece of paper in there if you wanted. If you, because this is cheaper than buying like a class set of whiteboards. You could buy a class set of these dry erase pockets, and then that's cool because they're also versatile. You can put worksheets and stuff in the pockets, and your kids can write on and wipe off. Also, they're less expensive than whiteboards. So you could either grab one of those dry erase pockets, or you could grab a whiteboard, and that's what she did, and she did it really well. And then she just took a picture before her iPad deleted her camera, and then she gave that to me later. So you can do it with the fancy app, you can do it with paper and pencil, you can do it with dry erase board. I like either the app or the dry erase board because kids, when they have to stop and erase in whatever with like a pencil, it kicks them out of like the frame of mind of actually composing. So the app or the dry erase board make it so easy to just zoop, you know, and just keep going and not get caught up with like the process of erasing or whatever. And anyway. Okay, so they do that and they submit it to me, and that's day 3, assuming we have time. And then if kids have extra time, there are a couple apps that are sort of music apps I could use, or we can play the Easter egg game that I talked about already, or there are a couple other options. I always try to have backups because you never know when you're going to need the backups. Okay, I'm running out of time, but I want to make sure that I talk to you a little bit about some of the other things that we added in. So kids can do, we could make those things that we created, the 2 measure patterns, and show that to parents and submit that to parents, and we could read through them, and we could show them like, these are the things that we created, we are reading them, we're recording ourselves. That's a super cool thing for parents to see, because they're seeing sort of all parts of the process happen, and kids really take ownership because they created and they are reading. That's a super fun thing to add. Another thing that we could add in is we could take those patterns and sort of link them together, so that like you have, you know, one kid's line, another kid's line, another kid's line, another kid's line. That would take a little bit of editing and shifting and stuff, but it's something cool that you could either show to parents through that video as like a slide, or you could have kids reading that. There's a lot you could do. One of the other things I'm having is that earlier in the year we talked about, earlier this semester we talked about the brass family. It was one of the curricular things that we had to do, is identify brass instruments by sight and sound. And so we went through, we talked about the trumpet, we talked about the French horn, we talked about the tuba, we saw video examples of each of those. And so one of the things that I'm doing is I'm adding in a slide in the video that I'm sending out to parents that says, we learned about these instrument family, or the instrument family, the brass family, here are the instruments we learned about. I'm going to give your kid 1 minute to tell you something about one of these instruments. So I put the pictures up on the screen, and then I was able to find a countdown video on YouTube, and I was able to download it and use it so that it just shows up on the page. And so when the parents are going through this video, they're going to see a little countdown. The kid's going to get a minute to answer and say, you know, something about the trumpet or something about whatever. And I put little prompts there for the parents to say like, okay, so you learned about the trumpet. What can you tell me about the trumpet? Or what can you tell me about the French horn? And actually I put up like pictures of trombone, tuba, French horn, trumpet, and I say like, have your student tell you one thing, at least one thing about one of these instruments. It could be a name. It could be, you know, a video we watched about it. It could be the sound that they remember hearing. It could be an element of the instrument. It doesn't matter. I don't care. But I want the parents and the kid to have that sort of back and forth moment, because a couple things. One, it gives me time. It like adds time to that video without me actually having to edit or do more. It shows the parent what we've learned. Like, it's hard for us to take like that moment of like, well, we talked about the brass family, we learned about what it is, it's so important, we got to know, it's in the curriculum, but like, how do you make that exciting for a concert? Well, in this moment, it's sort of a special moment, because if they're watching at home with their student, you know, then they can have that conversation, they're pulled in, they can see what the kid remembers. It's more special because it's their kid. It's not just them like watching some, you know, mass of students. It's their kid, and they're getting to see that. And so that's sort of a cool extra thing to add in. Sorry, Instagram, your cord got bumped, and now your device is low on battery. Anyway, so that's sort of a cool extra thing that I added. There are a couple more little things like that with older grades. We've been doing like these musician profiles where we talk about, you know, Stevie Wonder or the Beatles or Beyonce or John Coltrane or whoever. And so I'm also having a moment where, like, you know, 2-minute countdown on a clock that's embedded in the video. And I'm going to put several of those profiles and names up, and the kid has to talk to their parents about one of those people. What's, you know, something about that person that makes them special, something about their life or their genre or their whatever, and the kid gets to go through and sort of talk and explain some of that as they go. And so I'm trying to add an element like that for each grade level so that the kid can explain and talk through some of that. As I talked about today, we're also taking like some of those things that we would normally do, like Humpty Dumpty, and just souping it up a little bit. In day 5 of these lessons, I take Little Bo Peep, and I have, you know, a sheep come out. And Little Bo Peep goes through, and then we learn the poem, because again, it's another nursery rhyme. It's good for them to know. We talk about, you know, what does the sheep do? We can make a connection to Mary Who Had a Little Lamb. You can make a connection to lots of other different things. This sheep, you know, is a puppet. So, you know, you could ask the puppet questions, you could have the puppet answer things, you could have the puppet talk about, well, actually the thing that I've been doing is other words. So Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep and doesn't know where to find them. Go run out, find them, freak out, and then they'll bring them back. And the sheep's like, no. Okay, well, hold on. Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep and doesn't know where to find them. Call the fire department, call the police, call the neighborhood watch. They will find the sheep. No. And so the sheep's like, you know, explaining the part of the song. Again, it's giving that context to the song, but also sort of being silly in the process. We think about other things that maybe we could do, like, you know, send out a tweet, the sheep are missing, or, you know, whatever you're going to do to get the word out. And then the sheep can sort of like, no. Along with that, if you do teach Maria Had a Little Lamb, which I do with my first grade, I also teach this book called Maria Had a Little Llama. Maria tenía una lamita. And it's in English and Spanish. It's this super cool book by Angela Dominguez, but it shows basically the Peruvian mountains and these llamas, and this little girl Maria who has these llamas, and the llama follows her to school. So it's a fun way to make a connection with another thing that's like another animal, but also giving it new context and changing it up, making it a little bit more exciting, a little different. I actually found a video of the author reading this book for a read aloud, and the person who they're reading aloud to is like another adult, and the adult keeps stopping and asking these clarifying questions, and I'm like, oh my god, like those are the things that I would ask if I were there to help students understand. So like, this is perfect. So like, I found the video so super cool because the author was reading it, and they kept giving context and explanation. Like, one of the things they talked about was like questions that I would also have asked, like, ooh, what's that instrument over there? And then the author explains, like, oh, you know, it's a string bass or whatever. It's the kind that we have, and you know, the kind they have in Peru or what. And or he'll ask, like, oh, why is the teacher wearing? Oh, let me see if I can find a picture of it. Why is the teacher wearing that hat? there's a teacher. And they're like, oh, well, it's sort of a traditional Peruvian, you know. And so it gives more context and explains a little bit better than I ever could in that super cool little video. That's if you're adding in Mary Had a Little Lamb. It's an easy connection to make if you're doing Little Bo Peep. And again, sort of the nursery rhyme thing. You could string together a bunch of little nursery rhymes like this. What I'm planning on doing with my second grade is adding in Humpty Dumpty, Little Bo Peep is sort of a different version of that. A little bit of Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick, maybe one more. Throw that together and then send that out to parents with the other little connecting parts. I'm trying not to make too much work for myself with these and just sort of trying to videotape those moments, those little moments we have in class, and string them together in a way that parents think are exciting or fun, but also lets them see into my classroom. Okay, I'm almost out of time. I wanted to make sure that I brought out a couple more books. We're almost done with March. Like the next time I see you will be April. And March is Women's History Month, so I've been sharing books with my students. I've been sharing them on my Facebook page, some of the books that I'm doing. One of the books that I got in the fall for Indigenous Peoples Month was this one called Maria Tallchief, the first Native American ballerina. And I got this for the fall. And I got this when I was like looking for more books with Native Americans or First Nations people, and it's a super cool little book with some really great visuals that talk about this little girl Maria. There's also some like stock photo sort of stuff in here, but it's fun for kids to see, to talk about dance, to talk about her life, talk about what she did, and it's perfect that like I had it out at the beginning of the year and to bring it back out. You know, it's great even if you don't read it right now, you can put it on the shelf, and the kids who did learn it in class are like, ooh, I remember that book. And when it's pulled out, they sort of get a little bit more of that visual and remember. It helps remember because that token is out for them to see. Another book that I have, and I need to get more books like this. This is actually from a series. This is like the little whatever heroes book, or okay, this one's Little Libros, but there's like a whole nother series of like these like little musician, little whatever people books, because they're board books, and then like the cartoon is sort of a diminutive little smaller version of the person. But this one's about Selena, and it just goes through, and on each page has one little thing. So Selena Quintanilla was born in Lake Jackson, Texas. The most important thing in her life was family. Her true passion was music. Big Bertha was the name of her bus. And so on each page, it has that little thing about them, about the person. This one's about Selena. But on each page it has that one little thing and a picture. And this one happens to be in English and in Spanish. So Selena Quintanilla nació en Lake Jackson, Texas. Lo más importante en su vida era su familia. So it's in English and Spanish if you want to venture into saying it in both languages. Super cool book. But there's a whole series of these. So like I really want to get the one for Dolly Parton. There's another one for David Bowie. There's another one for like there's a whole series of musicians, and I need to like put them on my wish list or get them from those discount book websites. But this is the one I have, and it fits right in the window, and it's fun for kids to see. And usually I use this for the younger students because it's a little bit shorter. You could use it with whatever grade and pair it with a video. I like doing that with a lot of these things where I talk about the person as I read a little bit, I talk a little bit, and then we watch a video of them if we have it. But it's just a fun way to include. I wanted to make sure I talked about those two books because I don't know that I've talked about them before on the podcast or on these videos, and I have a whole links page on my Amazon wishlist page that's all just books for Women's History Month. So if you're interested, there's a whole slew of ideas there. You don't have to buy them from Amazon, but I like Amazon because it lets me list all those books in the same place, like Pinterest for stuff. I can list everything together, and then you can go in there and find all those books together, and then find the ISBN and go get it from your library or get it from a bookstore or whatever if you want, or you could get it from Amazon. Sometimes it's better to get from discount book websites or other places. Sometimes like some of these little books are just like $5 or whatever, and it's just easy to get in there. But anyway, I wanted to share those two books before I forgot. All right, I'm back next week with more ideas. Not second grade next time because I'm doing a row about second grade, but I hope you can sort of see the lessons from last time and the lessons for this time and get some ideas. I hope to see you back next week for week 11, Musical Mondays. Have a great week, everyone.